Hello, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Jess.
She's the traumatized.
And she's the abandoned. And
welcome
to our podcast,
where we talk about true crime, spooky things, and everything in between.
And today is our part 2 of our 2-part thing on cults. So, if you guys missed last week, go back, because Nikki talked to us about the FLDS. I knew I was gonna mess it up. Listen, my dyslexia is different than yours, but I do I F up the yes. So what is it?
FLDS
cult, which is like the former Church of Latter-day
Fundamentalists
Jesus.
Church
of Latter-day
of
Saints.
Latter-day Saints.
I knew that one.
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes. So yeah, it was really interesting. If you missed it, go back and listen to that first. This is great. Today I'm going to be talking about the Synanon, which Nikki doesn't know anything about, which is really exciting to me.
Nothing.
I love
No
blowing
idea.
her mind. It's gonna be great. It's
No
gonna be a great
idea.
time.
I'm gonna
Great time.
settle in, get nice and cozy.
Yeah. So chit chat's gonna be really short and sweet because we're recording this about 5 minutes after last week's.
How was your break?
Bathroom break, ate an onion ring, and got up, stretched the legs, it was great. It's no longer
Should we
snowing.
do weekly predictions? What are
fuck last time we did weekly predictions
it did not go well.
But you know what, yeah, let's put some stuff in the universe,
Some positive vibes out there.
Next time you guys see me, I'm gonna be settled in at my new place, surrounded by my friends and family, and healing, and probably still unpacking because I'm that chaotic, but at least settled and healing and moving on. That's what I'm doing. What about you? Really glad I'm back.
Hopefully it's a good week.
Mm-hmm.
No doctor's appointments this week, so everything's good.
Good.
Relaxing,
Yep.
editing, cleaning,
Some reading in there,
reading, crying because
Gaming?
of the book.
Oh, right.
Maybe
right.
gaming. I don't know. I have not touched the new Harry Potter game.
I am forcing myself to. I know that sounds absolutely horrible, but I was so excited for it, and then all this shit happened. And then it's hard to me because I've started games before, not in the right mental space, and I ended up hating them. And like Borderlands, was it 3 that we played with you guys? I hated that the first time we played it. I did not like it at all.
I loved Borderlands 3.
When we played it again, I enjoyed it a lot more. But I think it's because the first time I played it, I was not in a good mental space, and I was still really pissed off. Well, no, see, Maya, spoiler alert, Maya died in the third one, right? Or she died she died.
Yeah, she dies in the third one.
But I hated the Calypso twins. I hated the little girl.
Yeah,
I just did not like it. But I also think I was in not a good. So I'm nervous about her, but I've also keep hearing all these amazing things, and I'm like, maybe that's what I need, an escape for a little while.
Right.
So I'm forcing myself to play it at least for an hour or two. My attention span's really shit right now because of everything going on. So I can't really play.
I feel like I'm just constantly on TikTok, and I'm just I don't know.
Maybe
it's an activity that doesn't leave me nauseous.
Activity that doesn't make you nauseous, and it's so easy to just disconnect and scroll. However,
which is not good. So I mean, a couple nights I'll force myself to play some Apex. Suffer a completely different way, but
I think maybe this is something we could both do. When we both get back and we're both focusing on future and whatever, maybe we hold each other accountable and only scroll TikTok for 30 minutes to an hour a day or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because I could easily, and I think I stay up too late because I'm on it too. And it's so addicting.
I've stopped at bedtime. Night? Yeah, at bedtime it's Criminal Minds and Block Duco until I fall asleep.
And then there's a new thing.
The new event. Yeah, I've been watching it for 2 days for it to come out.
I'm so glad you're addicted to that as much as you're actually better than me too, which is funny because I have never even gotten close to completing an event. So,
I mean, neither have I since that one time.
One day,
so frustrating.
Anyway,
anyhow,
so fun fact of the day.
Fun fact of the day.
Did you know that smiling actually boosts your immune system?
Well, that's interesting.
Because you think about it, and it makes sense because when you're like depressed and when you're sad or stressed out, you get sick. So just force yourself
to smile through the pain.
It'll boost your immune system, apparently. No, I do think it like smiling does kind of trick your brain into being happy, which does, endorphins and stuff. So, but yeah, it'll boost your immune system. All right, are we ready?
Do I need buckles right away?
Synanon, yes.
I need buckles right away.
Not right away. No, not right away. I'll give you a warning. Maybe, probably. I'll try.
Oh boy, here we go.
Let's
go. Jump in.
So, Synanon is actually known as one of the most dangerous cults in American history.
I've never heard of it.
Me neither. Believe it or not, it started out as a drug rehabilitation program.
What? Wait. What? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, this was a wild trip for me because I was learning all about this and I was like, oh my God. Okay. So, super brief overview. It was founded by Charles Diedrich in 1958. Synanon transformed into an alternative community centered on group truth-telling sessions known as The Game in early 1960s, and by the 1970s, it had evolved into the Church of Synanon.
Question: was LSD in these sessions? Sounds familiar,
doesn't it? Though.
Huh. Okay. Continue.
Yeah. There's a pattern. There's a pattern. There were signs. Launched in a dinghy in Santa Monica, it eventually operated centers up and down the California coast, morphing into a utopian community, then a religion, then a cult, with more than $30 million in assets and upwards to 1,300 followers.
What?
Like, this was like a big fucking deal, and I'd never heard of it. Like, all right. True believers would shave their head, wear overalls, and live together at Synanon compounds, professing an almost slavish obedience to Diedrich, no matter how brutal his methods were.
Don't like that.
Over the years, Diedrich grew more and more hungry for power, charging his members exorbitant fees and forcing them to do taxing physical labor. He also developed a hit list for those who tried to shut down his community, which included lawyer Paul Morantz, who nearly died as a result of a murder attempt arranged by Diedrich. And we are going to go into that story because
shit. Okay.
Wild. History of Charles Diedrich and the beginning of the cult. As a college dropout and a drunk, Charles Diedrich bounced from job to job, marrying, divorcing, and then marrying again. He then took part in an experiment at UCLA, testing LSD for a cure for alcoholism. Yeah, we didn't get out of the first page before LSD got brought into it, just saying.
I just had a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
Sounded like a similar situation that was going on in Australia. Therapy with LSD.
Fucking wild. Speaking to an oral historian who documented Synanon's short history in 1962, Diedrich called it the most important single experience in my entire life, crediting the drug with unlocking a newfound confidence.
Great.
I became a different person, really and truly, he said. Everything that has happened to me since Synanon and everything dates from that point. So, blame LSD.
Thank you, government, who gave him the LSD.
Born in 1913 in Toledo, Ohio, Diedrich was 4 when his alcoholic father died in a car accident. His mother raised him as a devout Roman Catholic. I believed, literally, that I would go to hell if I didn't go to church on Sunday, Diedrich recalled. But when he was 14, he read his stepfather's copy of H.G. Wells' The Outline of History and, quote, became a militant atheist almost overnight. end quote. Soon after, he began drinking. That was at 14, by the way. Easily bored, Diedrich wasn't one for learning or for working. He spoke in a growl and was overweight. The right side of his bulldog face would droop from a near fatal bout of meningitis at 29. Diedrich then came out west to Santa Monica at age 40, his second marriage in mid-collapse. He floundered for 3 years in the ocean breeze before walking into his first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous.
It was from, what did you say, meningitis?
Meningitis. Yeah. So he walked into his first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous.
At age 40.
At age 40. Partway through, Diedrich marches to the podium and shared with the group. People listened, they laughed, and then they applauded. And Diedrich was hooked. I went from one AA meeting to another every night. He told that to his psychiatrist, Daniel Casserole, one of a number of social scientists to write books on Synanon in 1960s. Said, that's all I did. I was the first one to speak, and I'd speak all night until they stopped me.
About what?
His alcoholism. He liked a crowd, and
he liked the attention.
Mm-hmm. And people would just listen to him. After the acid experiment
he wasn't going there to get help. He was just going there to
get attention.
So annoying. And like in doing so, he was preventing other people from getting help by telling their
Great start to this. After the acid experiment in 1957, he was 1 year sober at that time. Diedrich became a voracious reader of philosophy and psychology.
Okay. I don't like that. He's going to use psychology against people. Oh, God. Okay.
At the time, Diedrich was living on a $33 a week unemployment check, and he began to taper off from Alcoholics Anonymous. When other recovering alcoholics checked up on him, Diedrich would engage them in impromptu meetings. Equal parts grad school synopsism and combative group therapy sessions, those get-togethers became a thrice weekly affairs. So basically, he stopped going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and then people would go to check on him, and he'd be like, let's just have a meeting right now. And he started to... This is how
have his own meetings.
And lead his own meetings 3 times a week. Then one day, a young heroin addict named Whitney Walker, fresh out of prison, joined the group. As he began inviting other dope fiends, and that's in quotes, to the mix, the language grew coarser and the crosstalk more aggressive. Diedrich loved it. The sessions became known as Synanons, which is a combination of symposium, or perhaps like a seminar, and anonymous. So he basically started to create his own anonymous group.
I'm uncomfortable.
It gets worse.
What?
So Diedrich, who provided couches for people to crash on as they kicked the heroin, would come to believe that addicts weren't fully fledged adults and shouldn't be treated as adults. So because they were addicts, they were not fully fledged adults. So he wouldn't treat them as such.
That's okay.
The younger addicts took to calling him Dad.
Ew.
When the gatherings grew too large for Diedrich's apartment, he leased a storefront in Ocean Park for $100 a month. That same year, 1958, the group incorporated as a non-profit.
So now he could collect money. Okay.
Convinced that his creation was innovation on par with the alphabet, Diedrich predicted it would be as famous as Coca-Cola one day.
Not true, because I had never heard of it, though.
The city that he was in didn't see it that way. Its inspectors declared that the building wasn't up to code and they had it bulldozed.
Goodbye.
Yeah, see you, bye. Like, nah, fam, you're not as big as Coca-Cola. Diedrich moved his flock of now 55 members or so to the old National Guard Armory building on the beach in Santa Monica, which drew the ire of neighbors. And this would become a time-honored tradition on the west side. You think about it, and because he was treating addicts, right? And so when they would have their meetings, a ton of addicts would come to these meetings. And of course, if you have like a home that you've lived in and now they're addicts meeting next door.
Yeah.
10 days after moving in to this new place, Diedrich and 3 other members were arrested for treating drug addicts without a license and operating a hospital in a residential zone. This is according to Los Angeles Times.
I mean, duh. Like,
yeah. And you don't have a freaking license. Diedrich responded. Oh, go ahead.
Like, that's so dumb. Like, how do you not think of that? Like,
Diedrich responded, Apparently, we started saving lives on the wrong side of town.
Continue. Continue.
He spent 25 days in jail.
That's it.
Thus began the media's decade-long enchantment with Synanon. And again, enchantment. I didn't watch the news back then, but I never really... It was before our time, so...
This was in the 50s?
Yeah, in the 60s.
Mm.
Early on, the Los Angeles Times ran a 2-part feature on the group. The Los Angeles Mirror published a 4-part series. A 14-page photo spread in Life magazine hailing Synanon as a, quote, a tunnel back into the human race was followed by a glowing write-up in the Time magazine, which repeated Diedrich's dubious claim that 80% of addicts treated by Synanon were stayed clean. So they started praising his name.
Mm.
Reporters loved Diedrich, who provided eminently quotable. He would later be credited with coining the saying, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life."
Oh, no. No.
That was him.
We'll make our own.
This is another quote by him. "Crime is stupid. Delinquency is stupid. And the use of narcotics is stupid," he told the New York Times. What Synanon is dealing with is addiction to stupidity.
What? Addiction to stupidity. Okay.
Because crime is stupid, delinquency is stupid, and the use of narcotics is stupid. So they're dealing with an addiction to stupidity.
But is he wrong? No, I don't think he's wrong.
He's not wrong.
Oh, I hate that even more.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my. Okay. Well, continue.
You're not gonna like this story. So we're gonna go into some stories from people who went through the program. So the first one we're gonna go to is Bill Lane. He was a 20-year-old junkie living in Brooklyn when his mother heard about Synanon on TV. There was no such thing as a drug rehab in those days, Lane said. There was no help. You got busted and you went to prison. So he arrived at the Santa Monica compound in 1962 with no money. As his quote, "When I first got there, I was sick. There was no medication. You kicked on the couch in the middle of the living room. I just got caught up in what all was going on. In all honesty, I loved it. I had a fabulous experience. It saved my life."
That's it? What does that mean? You just quit drugs? Just cuz?
Yeah.
Like,
no medication. You just kicked it on the couch.
You just detoxed right there and that's it? Never again? Like, magic?
Every Saturday night, Synanon threw a huge party open to the public with a jazz band included. And Lane said it was the biggest thing that happened in LA.
What does that have to do with your sobriety?
It was fun. But life centered around Synanons, which became known as games or simply the game. Also, for all you 90s kids, you just lost the game. So sorry, not sorry.
Rude.
Because every time I was reading this, I was like, no! So, haha. Okay, back to seriousness. We're going to go into, I have a whole thing about what the actual, like, what was involved with the game. But it's brief overview where members would sit in a circle, call out people on their secrets, their dishonesties, and their hypocrisies. Another story, before becoming Charles's third wife, Betty Coleman was a prostitute and a junkie. Quote, "I think I stayed the first 2 or 3 days just out of total fascination," she said on her first encounter with Synanon in 1959. She said, "I was sick as a dog. I was going through the usual withdrawal symptoms and everything, but I was just as fascinated. I had never been around other addicts. It's such a strange motley lot, you know, of people. It was a weird scene and I got caught up in it." Coleman would relapse a number of times, but she always returned and eventually ended up marrying Diedrich.
Okay.
U.S. Senator Thomas Dodd declared that Synanon could, quote, "lead the way in the future to an effective treatment for not only drug addicts, but also criminals and juvenile delinquents."
Could they?
And I'm interested because so to me, what I'm getting is it was the experience that made the detoxing. It was being around other addicts who were detoxing is what made it less painful.
I'm
Because
confused.
they were so fascinated by everything going on around them that they weren't focused on their own pain. Maybe
I don't know.
I don't know.
Confused. You have the page. You know.
That's never explained.
It's never explained.
That part of it is never explained.
So just magically, these people just
They
like
detoxed.
and that's it. Never again.
Now the game situation is more along the cult, but it started as a rehab facility and an actual good rehab facility. And
I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I'm
like I do. I think it's the idea of being around other addicts and detoxing altogether.
I don't know. It's weird. Peer pressure, detoxing.
Next one. Social scientists flocked to see that for themselves while Hollywood came out with the film Synanon in 1965, starring Edmund O'Brien as Charles and Eartha Kitt as Betty. So we could watch that. So it is a legit film. So 10 years after its founding, Synanon boasted at least 1,100 members and was receiving $2.5 million a year in donations.
Jesus, from who?
From recovered addicts, from people who thought they were doing good work. It had $7 million worth of real estate in Santa Monica, West LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Tomlinson Bay, Reno, Detroit, New York City, and Puerto Rico. Owned a number of gas stations and ran a $1 million a year specialty advertisement business that sold pins, office supplies, and bearing the Synanon logo. 10 years after its founding, they were.
I'm just like, how is like, oh hey, we got some money for donated to us for our rehabilitation program. Oh cool, let's buy gas stations. What?
Well, maybe the businesses were then employing the addicts and turning cash, and then the profits would then go back to the company. I don't fucking know.
Okay.
Salesmen implored Fortune 500 companies to buy from Synanon and save a life.
I'm sorry, what? Say that again?
So they would, because they had a specialty advertising business that would sell pins and office supplies. So those salesmen would implore Fortune 500 companies to buy from us and save a life, because not only are you buying
station,
buy the gas stations. Yep, you buy gas from us and you're saving a life.
Guilt tripping if I've ever heard of it.
While all this was going on, few noticed, but the Synanon mission had begun shifting. In 1969, the organization dropped the goal of graduation. From then on, addiction could be treated only by keeping addicts within the fold. So before, you would get them clean and they would go on and they would graduate into newer and better things. But now...
Question, how is he still able to do this without a license? Without proper...
That will be talked about. Okay.
Keep doing illegal things without getting repercussions.
Hey, he spent like a couple days in jail.
Not even a month. He didn't even spend a full month in jail.
A couple days.
Okay.
Synanon began welcoming non-addicts, and Diedrich suggested that he was getting out of the dope fiend business.
Okay.
He created the Punk Squad, a sort of boot camp devoted to disciplining juvenile delinquents sent to Synanon by their parents and courts.
What? The court system? How is this legal? How is this a thing? How?
The organization began marketing the game as a new type of therapy. Synanon rebranded itself in the 1970s from a drug treatment program to a psychotherapy program and started attracting middle-class people through the Synanon game. And that was a sociologist, Richard Offshee, who spent time in the organization studying it as a non-resident. By the early 1970s, some 34,000 people in California, New York, and Detroit were paying to participate in the games.
Oh, God.
It was the heyday of the human potential movement, when Americans were rushing off to therapists, coaches, New Age movement like etc., religious like Divine Light Mission, alternative communities like Esalen, and cults like the People's Temple and Synanon, many of which had begun in California. Diedrich would often say Synanon was an experimental society, or put it when he was deposed by Marantz as an ever-changing group with ever-changing goals, thrusts, directions, and so on. After Diedrich moved to Marion County, he started wearing overalls. The trend spread until the attire was all but mandatory. Just fucking, why overalls?
Why?
I don't know.
A lot of things. What do you mean?
A lot of things. When Diedrich quit his 3-a-pack-a-day habit, he would smoke. In 1970, he decreed that everybody else should quit. The decision had been a financial benefit since Synanon had been spending $250,000 a year on cigarettes.
This man was smoking 3 packs a day. How is he alive?
I don't know, because people like him end up not getting cancer, but people who have never smoked a pack a day in their life get lung cancer. Like,
make it make sense. That's why my mom's like, I'm not gonna quit smoking because either you get cancer or you don't get cancer. Yeah, everything gives us cancer nowadays, including our food. So it is what it is. I'm gonna go when it's time for me to go. It's like, all right, cool. Just don't do it around me. Thanks.
You're not gonna like this.
I haven't liked a single thing that has come out of your mouth since the fun fact of the day. Okay.
Oh, smile. Helps the immune system. A greater financial benefit arrived in 1974 when the organization was granted religious status by the federal government.
How is it? How?
The idea came from Diedrich's concierge attorney, Dan Garrett, who saw a benefit beyond the tax advantage. Being a religion might mean Synanon wouldn't need to be licensed. He also pointed out that it would eliminate a number of silly questions as such. When do they graduate? And why do they have to obey? Nobody graduates from a religion. Naturally, Diedrich loved the idea, as did the Synanon board, which unanimously supported the plan and approved it. Though on one copy of Garrett's proposal, someone wrote, "Who will be God?" That was a question.
Good question.
That's a great question, right?
Since you're an atheist, wholeheartedly.
Since 14.
Since 14.
If the first phase of Synanon was about curing addiction and the second phase was about creating a utopian community for the middle class, the third phase was all about making money.
Ew.
Synanon adopted the slogan, "The People's Business," and what a business it was. By the end of 1976, it would have assets worth of $22 million, with $8 million in annual revenue coming in largely from specialty advertisement decision, as well as a mortgage business one member had donated, and cash contributions from all of its members.
It's a lot of gas stations.
It's a lot of gas stations.
Somebody just gave them a fucking business. Here you go. Yep. Red flag. It's a cult.
Yeah. Synanon owned 5,500 acres of property, including a 6-story Del Mar Club in Santa Monica, which is known as the Casa del Mar Hotel today, a cluster of nearby apartment buildings, 3 large compounds in Marin County, with another in Badger, California, which had its own airstrip. Add to that the fleet of 200 cars, 400 motorcycles, 62 freight trucks, 20 boats, 12 airplanes, along with $1 million invested in the stock market.
What the fuck?
By 1977, Diedrich was drawing an annual salary of $100,000, roughly $400,000 in today's money, and received a $500,000 pre-retirement bonus.
Okay.
Buckle up.
What do you mean?
No, like double buckle. I'm gonna need you to take a deep breath. Meanwhile, in their religion, babies were taken from their parents and raised in something called the hatchery.
What are they, chickens?
Mothers who wanted to see their kids too much were called head suckers.
What the fuck does that mean? Ew.
Children were taught communally in the Synanon school, and they wrote essays on Diedrich telling everyone what to do. They were taught karate. They were taught about changing partners, childliness, and fighting the holy war.
What do you mean changing a partner? A switch partner?
Synanon instituted a containment program, which was disallowed contact with outsiders. Red flag.
That's a cult.
One was only to participate with only other Synanon members. There was really only one main rule. Don't cross Charles Diedrich.
It sounds like there were a lot of other rules, honestly.
But really, they were all made by him. So really, if you think about it, just don't break any of his rules. Don't cross him. So when San Francisco Examiner called Synanon the racket of the century, the organization then turned around and sued forcing the hardest run newspaper to pay $600,000 and run a front page apology.
Ew.
Synanon later sued a local ABC station, which settled, and Time magazine, which had called Synanon a kooky cult. That's quote in the 1977 stories. Reporters were threatened. Their lives were threatened. Time's editor-in-chief was stopped outside of his apartment by two men with shaved heads who told him, quote, "We are going to ruin your life."
That's not creepy.
In response, "I don't know what these people might do," Diedrich said to a television reporter. "I don't know what action they may take against the people's responsible, their wives, their children. Bombs could be thrown into odd places, into homes of some of the clowns who occupy high places in the Time organization."
Creepy.
Synanon had a private security force and formed a paramilitary group, the Imperial Marines, that developed its own type of martial arts called Sindu, and by 1978 amassed an arsenal of hundreds of guns.
Oh, good. Guns. Red flag.
"We're concerned about the rising crime rate," a Synanon newsletter explained. "If trouble should occur, we're prepared to handle it." But if anything, Synanon was increasing the crime rate. In 1973, 3 members admitted to assaulting a Marin County rancher. Meanwhile, Diedrich hailed them as heroes.
For what? The man was probably just trying to feed his cows or something. They probably jumped him.
Another rancher was pistol whipped.
Okay.
In Santa Monica, Synanites beat up 2 black couples who had parked their car at a Synanon apartment building.
Why? Why? Just
"Non-violence," Diedrich said at a press conference, "was just the position. We can change positions anytime we want to."
I don't like that.
And he often delivered those positions through endless monologues broadcasted to Synanon facilities over The Wire, which is a low-powered FM radio station.
Where is the government? This is the time where the government needs to step in.
Step in.
And do something.
Shit's getting weird. Well, in 1976, Diedrich decreed that members should stop having kids, saying, "I think children are a very bad investment."
Hold up. Is this a cult where they don't allow sex? Is this an opposite cult? No, they just want to kill the kids.
The long rant betrayed an astounding contempt for his followers. "All the dummies. You, all of you all just sit there as this organization gets richer and fatter and the more fun to be in, the more powerful. You love that, but you're all alike. You're all alike. You sit there when I make all these speeches. You just sit there."
What else are they supposed to do?
During the same speech, it revealed how Diedrich then saw himself. Another quote, "I have done exactly like the rest of guys that run the world. I could have run a state, a country, a city. It doesn't make a difference. I am one of those guys. I know that magic."
Dude, jump off a bridge.
After the no children mandate was issued, women were encouraged to have abortions. "Having an abortion is like squeezing a boil, nothing more," Diedrich said.
No, that's so disgusting. I think it's time for me to go. I think I got things to do. I think I have anything to do but be here right now at this moment in time.
Men were pressured to getting to vasectomies, so it did go both ways.
Okay. Fair treatment.
80 such operations took place in 1976 alone.
Okay.
There were literally endless, ongoing, intense attack sessions going on, focused on males who refused to get vasectomies. As soon as they gave in, they'd walk into the next room and there were doctors waiting to give them.
No. Oh, I'm sick.
Paul Ritter was disturbed by the mass sterilization, as I think we all are. When he spoke against it, he told me that the general reaction is, if you don't want to do it, pack your bags and get out.
I'm just like, I mean, is it really so bad not to have kids born in a cult and forced to go through that trauma?
I mean, I think it's sad for the people who get out afterwards, but yeah.
I mean, vasectomies can be reversed. So if they're done correctly and not done in a backwoods back room of like the places where they were.
Like, they were.
So it's questionable, I guess. I don't know.
Sounds questionable to me. So anyways, Phil went to the Marion County Sheriff's Office thinking, surely there has to be a law against this sort of thing. I mean, these guys are getting forced into sterilization. But there wasn't. The authorities formed Synanon attorneys who then told Ritter to not come back, which forced him to leave his wife and child behind in the cult.
He didn't take them with him. They didn't want to come? Like, yikes.
Well, because what happened is he left to go report this.
Oh, and he wasn't allowed to come back.
His wife and child remained there. So the next big rule was handed down after Betty died in 1977. Betty was the third wife, for all of you who, Diedrich, who was 64 at the time, wanted to remarry.
Stop.
I sent up a flare, like any monarch of old times would have done, he told reporters, and I let the word out that I was available. Of the 6 women who applied for the opening.
Oh, 6? I'm surprised he got that many.
Diedrich chose Jenny Shoren, a 31-year-old teacher at one of the Synanon schools. Shortly thereafter, Diedrich decided that marriage should no longer be permanent. Couples were told to split up and form new 3-year-long love matches.
Here, I thought we were getting a cult without sex. Here, I thought we were going to be different this time.
Within days, 230 couples had filed for divorce.
What do you mean filed? He didn't say divorce, did he?
Well, he said marriage should no longer be permanent, so couples were told to split up and form new 3-year-long love matches. So yeah.
So that just means divorce, not just like separate.
I mean, because it's no longer permanent.
Jesus. Okay.
And among those people filing was Ritter's wife. So the one who was left behind with the daughter, she filed for divorce.
Sad face.
Making matters worse, Synanon was restricting how often Ritter could come visit their 3-year-old daughter. He had filed a motion to be allowed to see her more. However, one day, as Ritter was returning home from the supermarket, 2 young men approached him. Without saying a word, they beat him with wooden mallets, leaving him on the ground bleeding with a fractured skull. They didn't even take his wallet. The attack was among at least 18 that California Attorney General's office eventually linked to Synanon.
Jesus.
So, back to Paul Morantz. All right, so this is the guy who, we said at the very beginning, who death threat, right? This is his little story. So, Paul Morantz always wanted to be a writer, but a girlfriend had convinced him to go to law school as a backup. And he had a success in the field, writing for magazines like Rolling Stone and for a made-for-TV movie. But he gained even more distinction as an attorney, suing a group of nursing homes that kidnapped homeless alcoholics, shot them up with Thorazine, and collected Medicare and Medicaid for treating them. Also, I want to do that story because that sounds insane.
What?
That's like a story within a story. And I'm like, hold on.
Oh, wow.
I could not deviate anymore, but I was like, what? So... gonna
put that on the list.
Pin in that one. The nursing home case obviously was all consuming, so after that was over, he planned to get back to writing. But in June of 1977, he received a call from Ed Wynn. Ed's wife, Frances, had a history of psychosis. When Ed noticed that she appeared to be on the verge of another episode, he planned to take her into a treatment center later after he returned from work. So before leaving, he told her that he would go to Vitta's family clinic for tranquilizer to hold her over. The clinic, however, suggested Frances go to Synanon. She went thinking she was just going for a simple counseling session, but within minutes of walking through the doors, she found herself being shorn by someone with an electric razor. She was screened at a part of, right before they would take her into the game, but told her husband that they didn't want her, that only Synanon could help her. So the next day, Frances was shipped by a bus to a facility in Tomales Bay. This, she was told, was her new home. Meanwhile, her husband Ed had no idea where she was, what was going on. She was just shipped away.
Just taken.
When he went to visit her, thinking that she was still in Santa Monica, he was informed that he couldn't see her for 90 days.
That's insane.
The story really bothered Morantz, so he called one of his contacts at the Department of Public Health and asked what Synanon was licensed for. One of those questions that you're like, The voice on the other end of the phone dropped to a whisper and said, Synanon is not licensed. Morantz then asked, how can it not be licensed? And the health officials said, "We don't understand it either, and they won't let us in."
Whoa, okay. Red flag. Biggest red flag in the world.
Like, how
Right
is
there.
that? How is that? Back in the 60s, when Synanon was charged for running a hospital without a license, Governor Pat Brown signed a law clarifying that Diedrich's brand of drug treatment wasn't medical care per se and didn't need a license.
That's false.
But the bill didn't specify anything about treating mental illness, which meant Synanon could be in trouble for taking in Frances.
Okay.
Brantz then pressured Synanon to release her, and when he and Edwin went to pick her up, they saw a sea of people with shaved heads and overalls, smiling.
That's so creepy.
It gave Marantz goosebumps. He said something was seriously wrong. I had a sense, Marantz recalled in an interview, that everything in the 31 years of my life that had happened previously was all pointed towards this moment, this time, and this was going to be the test that I thought I always wanted to have.
Oh, thank you.
Marantz effectively declared war on Synanon that day, and Synanon responded. Rumor had it that Diedrich could be heard over Synanon's private radio network ranting, "Who is this guy, Marantz? Why doesn't someone just go and break his legs?" The journalist turned lawyer first sued organization in 1977 on behalf of Frances and Ed Wynn, who claimed that Frances had been kidnapped, brainwashed, and tortured by the group, quote, "for purposes of financial gain despite her emotional instability," unquote. They were awarded $300,000 judgment.
Nice.
So he won.
Suck it.
Right? Like, finally. Marantz worked obsessively to get other members out, lobbying the Marion County Supervisors and State Department of Health to crack down on Synanon. He was scared. He knew Diedrich was capable of violence. A former Synanon member had nearly been beaten to death, and this was like recently. And so Marantz figured that his own name must be high on Diedrich's hit list, especially as a lawyer going after and he's winning cases. So threatening phone calls were coming in at all hours of the night. It really concerned him when the threats just suddenly stopped. Marantz bought a shotgun and was constantly looking over his shoulder. He checked his car for bombs before he was getting in. He was like literally just like,
that's insane.
I can't even imagine living in that kind of fear. Like, I can't. So as Marantz returned to a small home in Pacific Palisades the evening of October 11th, 1977, he was eager to turn on the TV, relax over Game 1 of the World Series, the Dodgers versus the Yankees. It was a thing. For one moment, I'm not going to think about Synanon, he told himself. I'm just going to watch the baseball game and enjoy my day. Marantz placed his notebooks on the kitchen table, walked to the mail slot by his front door. Through the grill of the mailbox, he could see an outline of an unusually shaped box. A scarf, maybe. It was hard to tell without his glasses, so he reached for it.
No, that's not what you do.
Marantz remembers not so much the pain of the rattlesnake as it sank its fangs into his outstretched hand, but the regret. He thought
it was a rattlesnake.
He thought, they don't get me like this. I'm not that stupid. Then he heard a scream. He realized it was his own. The 4.5-foot reptile that had its rattler removed to keep it quiet then dropped to the floor and recoiled. So Marantz then dashed out the back door, called the police, called an ambulance. I've been bitten by a rattlesnake. It's Synanon. Synanon got me. So word of the attack quickly went viral. Not viral. That was national.
Yeah.
It would have gone viral if it was today. News anchor Walter Cronkite called it bizarre even by cult standards. I mean, literally they put a rattlesnake like in someone's mailbox.
Yeah, insane.
In time, Marantz would have his revenge, though, laying bare a grim tale whose genesis could be traced, appropriately enough, to an LSD experiment. In recording of a speech later seized by LAPD, Diedrich fumed. "We are not going to mess with the old time, turn the other cheek religious posture. Our religious posture is, don't mess with us. You can get killed. Dead. Physically dead. We either have a good thing here or we don't. If we have a good thing here, then we're not going to permit people like greedy lawyers to destroy it." So now we're going to break down the game because we've mentioned it a couple times and I figured it'd be good to like actually break down what this is. Fucking
we could have
wild.
done this like 20 minutes ago.
No, but we had stories to tell. So now we're... It's wild. Are you ready?
No.
This is... Okay.
Okay.
So, at 7 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, the chosen trippers, around 50 in number, of all ages, were met in the Del Mar lobby by people dressed in long white robes and yellow silk scarves. A shepherd led them through candle-lit and incense-burning corridors to a locker room filled with rows of army cots and name cards. Each person stripped and put on white robes. Watches were taken as time was no longer important. Women removed all makeup and jewelry, a symbolic stripping of past selves. The guides, all experienced game players, turned each group from enthusiasm to a depression and defeat, wallowing in its collective shame. Sitting in comfortable green armchairs, they made the dope fiends tell tales of their drug, rape, and crime and beatings. The squares were pushed to confess their prior loneliness and despair. The games turned on one another then. Disoriented by lack of sleep, each was moved to the point of intense disillusionment. Aides who did their homework provided ammunition to the conductors on each tripper. Everyone was to cop out, which it means to confess their past sins. The result was implementation of common bond and sense of ideals, all identified with Synanon. Each tripper was to write a paper on some feeling or admission. A big shot would advise the trippers that they were not really chosen as an honor, but each was really selected because they were a resistor, thinking he or she knew a better direction Synanon should go. Part of the dummies that hold Synanon back. Maybe, Diedrich had said, one day we will just put dingbats like you against the wall and wash them off and bring them back into the human race.
What does that mean?
There was the witching hour, which featured a Ouija board operated by witches, 2 women in black and white robes.
No, thank you.
The board would spell out Emerson's messages on self-reliance, but self-reliance was interpreted as the ability to make choices, and the best way to end loneliness and suffering was through trusting in Synanon.
So Synanon is the god they worship.
Mm-hmm.
It's the organizing.
Mm-hmm. They would adopt the Synanon family, said the board, or the 5th circle in Dante's hell, where tormented souls are terrorized, torn, and awaited them. So either adopt the family or go down to Dante's 5th circle of hell.
This is insane.
When the first tripper, physically and emotionally exhausted, broke and wept, it caroomed to the others. Crying, trippers embraced and felt euphoria and transcending love. The conductor made it clear that this was the resistors' last chance, their last hope. So the game took on each other's broken, dirty, rotten story with great brutality. Aides returned with smut obtained from the unbroken spouses to use. The broken joined the attack. Some trippers began to hallucinate, Diedrich having achieved the LSD replicated altered state of consciousness. Fighting to stay awake, defenses wiped away. The unbroken broke asked for his forgiveness. So basically, if they continued and didn't stay and they were unbroken, they would bring in smut from their spouses. And then the people who had broken before would turn on them and also join on the attack. And it's the whole like sleep deprivation thing, I think, is what really was happening. Because I think there's like a whole thing like you stay awake for longer than, however many hours you start to hallucinate.
Mm-hmm. It was just really a sick form of torture.
It was. Some rolled up on the floor in fetal positions, some laughed, others howled and sobbed, some cried for their mothers. When they asked for friends, they were hugged in the mass. All thought the experience was beautiful at the end.
How?
At 8 a.m. Monday, hand in hand, the trippers went down the corridor towards the sounds of band music. Now in a ballroom, the trippers were surrounded by hundreds of cheering and clapping Synanites. The trippers, many of whom had been awake for 65 hours or more, were hugged and cheered. A hoopala began, which is the Synanon's dance. Everyone bonded through all the pain they had gone through. One just had to surrender to Synanon. Teachers, lawyers, doctors, police, politicians all got hooked, many forming an allegiance previously not matched in their lives to the group and trainers that had trained them. The trip was so successful that in only its second year, the Lifestyler's business had contributed $500,000. Despite the trip conversion success, the old-timers, the retired dope fiends, aka the Walking Dead, remained a problem. So the reason this whole thing was started, as alcoholics did not want to change, neither did they. Curing dope fiends was what they had wanted. Diedrich placed them on a 72-hour game stew and harangued them for not seeing his vision. Later, the flies, which Diedrich had trained youngsters, would take over the attack. When all were exhausted, Diedrich returned and offered them forgiveness for surrender. To this day, there is a disagreement over whether Diedrich ordered the violence perpetrated by Synanon members or merely just stoked the rage. So, like, whether the orders came down directly from him or he just, like, it fueled it.
I think they were orders. Why doesn't someone just break his legs? Hint, hint, wink, wink.
But that wasn't theoretically an order. That was just a suggestion. Former Synanon attorney Philip Bernadette insists it was the latter, that he just stroked their rage and didn't help. But 3 declarations written in 1983 by Synanon officials in exchange for immunity for prosecution stated that Imperial Marines prepared a hit list of Synanon enemies that was approved by Diedrich's assistant Walter Lubel. This hit list included former Synanon President Jack Hurst, whose guard dog was found hanged.
What?
Paul Ritter and Paul Morantz. They alleged that the security chief Art Walt Warfield had directed Imperial Marine Joe Musco, a Vietnam vet, to find a hitman to kill Morantz. When Musco reported the job would cost $10,000, Synanon executives deemed the price was too high and ordered the Marines to take care of Morantz themselves. In a subsequent deposition, Diedrich claimed to have a, quote, very dim memory of 1977. This was due to a series of strokes, but he said, quote, most of what Synanon did in 1977, at least what I knew about, I approved of because I pointed out before and over again, I'm one hell of a good executive, and not too much ever went on in the organization that I ran that I didn't approve of. I don't know everything that went on, though, of course.
Sure.
According to the 3 declarations, Lubel was the one who directed Munisco and Alan Hubbard to attack Phil Ritter, and it was Lubel, so his assistant, was the one who ordered them to travel to Los Angeles and plant the rattlesnake in Morantz's mailbox. The day after the attack, police arrested Munisco and Kenton, so the 2 people that were like the hitmen. A month later, Los Angeles prosecutor John Watson and 30 law enforcement officials descended on Synanon's new $1 million compound in Lake Havasu to arrest Diedrich on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder. They found him, according to Watson, in, quote, a stupor, straight staring ahead, and an empty bottle of Chivas Regal in front of him. He was so drunk that he had to be carried to jail in a stretcher.
Are you kidding me? So was he drinking this entire time? Wow.
In 1980, Diedrich pleaded no contest to conspiracy to commit murder. He was fined $10,000, sentenced to a 5-year probation.
Fuck off.
And barred from having any affiliation from Synanon going forward.
But it's still a thing. Or did it fall apart?
Absent its charismatic leader, the group floundered.
Okay.
The IRS revoked its tax-exempt status and ordered Synanon to pay $17 million in back taxes. In a lengthy court battle that ensued, Morantz provided hundreds of documents he had unearthed that implicated Diedrich and other Synanon officials in criminal acts. The court finally ruled against Synanon in 1984, finding that it had a, quote, policy of terror and violence. And it had practiced diverting corporate resources for the enrichment of individuals. So, Synanon declared bankruptcy and in 1991 formally dissolved due to tax fraud, destruction of evidence, and terrorism.
Terrorism? Wow.
Tie up a couple things. Paul Ritter, who was kicked out, was eventually reunited with his wife and daughter after they left Synanon in 1978. So the family got back together. He then died in 1997, just a few weeks shy of his 84th birthday. So they had almost 10 years together after. And Morantz still lives in Pacific Palisades. At age 72, he has neuropathy, though, arthritis, and a blood disease that he believes may actually be an artifact from the snake bite. Final quote was, "I'm going to set the record," he said, "for the longest murder ever."
Aw.
That's the story of Synanon, which was
That's insane.
extremely dangerous cult that would, like, take kids out on people.
My head hurt.
I'm sorry. This is a long day too. So yeah, guys, this is why we did it in 2 parts, because they were long stories. I think cults, honestly, you might just need to do in 2 parts because they're just so beefy.
Some are.
Yeah. But that's it for this episode. If you enjoy this podcast, please do not forget to follow us and leave a comment. If you are watching on YouTube, hi, like and subscribe. Do it, please. Have you done it yet?
You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with our username at TTATA Podcast. In our bio is our link tree that has our email if you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, ideas, topics, whatever have you. Say hi.
So done. You're about to fall asleep.
I am.
I know.
I'm about to go take a nap.
I can see it in your eyes. Oh my gosh! Thanks for listening, guys. What do we do next week?
Next week is a surprise. It's a solo episode probably, so you'll have my face, and that's it.
Yeah, we're gonna have Nikki. Woohoo! And then hopefully a week after that, I'll be back. But if not, you'll have Nikki, and you guys
Fingers
give her all the
crossed.
love and support, and keep you guys updated on everything, socials. Yeah, with that, we're gonna leave you with this beautiful inspirational quote.
Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness by Desmond Tutu. That was actually selected by Jess this week, so thank you for that contribution.
I try.
That could be you guys if you send us an email with your favorite quote.
Yeah, that could be like, oh, and that comes from, that could be you guys. So do it. Send us stuff. Anyways, all right, guys, have a great week. Make a difference. Go do something nice for someone. All right, bye.
Bye.